Hello, I'm Patricia Magliaro, and I'm going to be talking about Prince's negotiation with Warner Brothers. Prince was an American singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and record producer who was considered a guitar virtuoso, and he took R&B and funk to a whole other stratosphere and is remembered as one of the greatest songwriters of all time. He frequently stated that the music just flowed through him, and his near 1,000 written songs is perfect evidence of that. Warner Brothers is a label owned by Warner Music Group that was founded in 1958 by the film studio Warner Brothers. They have quite a few major recording artists under their belt, such as Madonna, Van Halen, James Taylor, Tom Petty, and of course Prince. Owner, Warner Music Group, is one of the big three recording labels in the global music industry. So, since Prince began working with Warner Brothers in 1977, he had frequent disputes with the label regarding control of his music. He wanted to have the ability to release music when he wanted and how he wanted, regardless of his contract or the label's input. Since he believed music flowed through him, he wanted to be able to release more than his one contractual album per year. This is just not how the music industry works, and the label knew that too much content in a short period of time would mean less earnings and consumption from fans. So in 1996, Prince split with Warner Brothers after changing his name in an attempt to get out of his contract. He even went as far as writing "slave" on his face on multiple occasions, including while accepting his 1995 Brit Award, to rebel against the music industry and Warner Brothers. After his split, Prince released his albums over the next few years under different indie labels and was one of the first artists to streamline his music directly to his fans through internet memberships and ticket sales. As of 2013, Prince was up for termination of his copyright, and here's where this negotiation regarding his catalog comes into play. So according to the Copyright Act of 1976, that went into effect January of 1978, termination of any transfer of copyright could take place after 35 years of its execution and is only eligible for 5 years after. And as of 2013, Prince would have been eligible for transfer of copyright of his masters, ownership that he had been fighting for since his signing in 1977. However, any work for hire is not eligible for copyright reversion, but Warner Brothers knew that it would be in their best interest to negotiate rather than lose all control. So this is where the negotiation between Prince and Warner Brothers began. Prince's main interest was the ownership of his entire catalog, released with Warner Brothers. He felt that if he did not own his masters, then his masters owned him. Therefore, he was not free, hence writing "slave" on his face. Warner Brothers didn't want to lose complete control over Prince's catalog, as he is one of the most influential and successful songwriters and artists of all time. Losing his catalog would mean losing money and control, because they would no longer be allowed to earn revenue from distribution, licensing, and copyright, or be able to release any of Prince's works. So Prince wanted a proper compensation and ownership, while Warner Brothers didn't want to lose compensation and ownership. They also didn't want one of the biggest artists to keep ruining their reputation. Prince waited until the 35-year mark, which would allow him to terminate his copyright and gain ownership of his music. So his bargaining position was that it was his right to terminate his copyright and own his catalog. He has always wanted to own his own music, and now he had the perfect opportunity. Warner Brothers' bargaining position in this negotiation was that they still wanted to be able to release and distribute Prince's catalog. So they wanted to make a deal that involved releasing new music under their label and rekindling their working relationship with Prince as an artist. Game theory could have very well been used in this negotiation. Knowing Prince's past battles with the label and his rebellious actions against his contract, Warner Brothers had a pretty good idea of the actions Prince would take and his stance coming into the negotiation. Game theory would allow them to prepare for all outcomes, plan out their responses to Prince's demands, and take action that would result in the response they'd hoped for from Prince. But Prince also knew what the label wanted, so he also used his understanding of their interests coming into the negotiation to respond and most likely plan for several outcomes as well. The two parties came in with the understanding that there would need to be some give and take, so following the rules of game theory and acting rationally, they came to a decision that benefited all parties. Knowing the past relationship between Prince and Warner Brothers, there could have easily been negative emotions coming into this negotiation. Also, looking at Prince's track record, it's very likely that the wrong response from the label could have led to no negotiation at all. Warner Brothers avoided any additional negative emotion to save the negotiation and start fresh with Prince, regardless of their history. Both Prince and representatives for Warner Brothers even stated post-negotiation that there were no bad feelings between the parties and that they were excited to begin working together again. This negotiation could have very easily been taken to court, but both Prince and the label knew it would be a very costly and drawn-out battle that would have only further pitted their interests against each other and strengthened any previous bad blood. It's in the label's best interest when it comes to copyright termination to renegotiate with the artist so that they can still retain some sort of profit, so both parties agreed to using alternative dispute resolution. The fact that Warner Brothers, after their past with Prince, was able to effectively negotiate and still have the rights to release new music, as well as distribute parts of his catalog, means that the negotiators involved really understood how to make a deal with a communication style such as Prince's. The label was able to maintain some rights of his new music and will continue to earn money while working with one of the biggest artists in history. Prince had ownership and control over all of his master recordings released with Warner Brothers and got to remaster one of his best-selling albums right in time for the movie Purple Rain's 30th anniversary. I would call this negotiation a win-win for both parties. Although I do think this was a great win-win outcome, I feel that this outcome saved the very thing that Prince was against, which was the record label, During these negotiations, Prince was able to gain full rights to his music, which was a battle he has been fighting for the entirety of his career, but he was now back in a working contract with Warner Brothers. However, from my understanding, Prince gained full rights over his entire catalog, which included any music released before the 35-year mark that is stated in the copyright law. This doesn't really work in the favor of the label, who, after the rise of digital music and streaming, was hurting enough as it is. This also meant that Prince could have full control over how his music was distributed, and although they gained some rights for distribution, a lot of Prince's music was now no longer available to the public. Although a perk of negotiations and ADR is the privacy of the process, perhaps this could have been discussed further in the negotiation than it was to work out more of Prince's work being available to the public. Both parties reached an agreement that would give Prince complete ownership and control of his back catalog, while starting a new working relationship with Warner Brothers to release a remastered version of his album Purple Rain in time for the 30th anniversary of the movie, and also included the release of a brand new album that would be distributed by the label. According to the responses from both Prince and Warner Brothers after the negotiation took place, both parties were happy with the outcome and excited to start fresh and work together again. Unfortunately, Prince passed away only 2 years after they reached their agreement. His album Purple Rain was remastered and released in 2015, and he released other albums before his passing, but there wasn't much time to see the long-term effects of this negotiation and the relationship between Prince and Warner Brothers. Music from Prince's vault is still being released today, but there is a plethora of his work that is still unreleased and probably won't ever be. And here are my references. Thank you for watching.